Hi, I'm CK at CK Education with today's advice for life. And today I want to talk about 3 ways you can demotivate people, and including your kids. The first way is to criticize. The second way is to compare. And the third way is to push too much. Okay, so let me explain these and give you some examples. So number one is to criticize. Now, sometimes people need criticism. There's no doubt about that. We all need to be criticized. We all need to be told that something is wrong, or we need to adjust, or we need to improve. And we need criticism. We need constructive criticism. And criticism certainly helps us become stronger and helps us become sharper. And criticism is helpful. But if you're only criticizing, if you're not praising, if you're not encouraging, if you're not supporting, and all you do is criticize, there are bosses like this, there are parents like this, all they do is criticize. The only thing you hear coming out of their mouths is criticism. Okay. Now, in some cultures, this is a norm. I'm not saying it's good, but it's the norm. Okay. And I think in a lot of Asian cultures, this seems to be sort of more common. So let me give you an example. When I was an engineer working at the Boeing company in Seattle, I met these really well-known, they were the top foremost experts in efficiency and productivity in the world. And they were called the Shingijutsu consultants, and they were from Japan. Most of them, the founder, Mr. Nakao, worked at under the legendary Taiichi Ohno, who created the Toyota production system. And the Toyota production system is known as the most efficient and most effective and most productive system in the world. And most production systems in the world, manufacturing or otherwise, have taken hints from or have tried to copy it and have successfully copied the Toyota production system. So without going into a lot of depth on that, Taiichi Ohno was a master, and he's written books on this, and people in my field know him as he is the guru, the master. Anyway, Mr. Nakao was one of the senseis, one of the consultants that I met early in my career, and I learned so much from him and his group. But he spent 30 years working for the master, Taiichi Ohno, and he said, for 30 years working under the master, I have never, ever one time heard a compliment. Never ever one time heard something positive from him. It was always a criticism. You didn't do this right. You didn't do that right. You need to do that better. It was always criticism. And so he told this story. Now, he learned so much from this man, from Taiichi Ohno, but he told that story to say, that's how we had it. And back in the day, we had no nice words. It was all criticism, and we worked our butts off, and it was just, nobody praised us. That's just what we did. Okay. Now, Mr. Nakao, he's an older gentleman. I don't know how old he is. When I met him, he was probably 70 years old. This was 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. So I don't know. He was an older gentleman, but he has spent the majority of his career before he retired under Taiichi Ohno. And he said he never heard a kind word. He never ever heard a kind word. And so you know what? When you met Mr. Nakao, you never heard a kind word from him either. And I imagine sometimes, I wonder what kind of a father Mr. Nakao is. I wonder if he's like that to his son. I know he has a son, at least one son. I don't know if he has other kids, but I wonder if he was like that to his kids. Because if he is, man, that'd just be absolutely terrible. To have a father who only criticizes, because that doesn't motivate people, it demotivates them. It deflates your ego. It deflates your pride. It deflates motivation. And so if you're one of those people, if you're a boss, if you're a parent, if you only criticize, you overly criticize, and you don't sort of balance that with praise and compliments, I think that you're demotivating the people under you or your kids. Number 2 is comparing. Have you ever been compared to other people? Do you like it? If someone says, hey, you know what? I know somebody, if you say something like, hey, yeah, my business is going well, and I'm really thankful that I'm getting more clients. And someone says to you, well, there's this guy that I know, he does like twice what you do. And he did it in less than, half the time that you did it. So, and he started talking about that guy. You wouldn't feel very good. Nobody would. Well, what does he have to do with me? I mean, I'm just, it has nothing to do with it. Nobody likes to be compared, And kids, when you're talking to your kids, well, your older brother, your younger brother is so studious and is so disciplined, or does things so well. is so well behaved. Why don't you be more like that? Or you compare your kids to yourself. When I was your age, so you should be more like me, or whatever the thing is. Or that other person, the neighbor's kids, man, look how well behaved they are. Why don't you be more like that? Nobody likes to be compared. Now, some parents mistakenly, weirdly think that this is going to motivate their kids if they compare them to other people. Or bosses do this too. They think that if they compare one employee to another or something like that, that's going to somehow motivate their people. It doesn't. It demotivates them. It puts them in a situation in which it just deflates any enthusiasm they might have had. And so comparison, and especially compared to other people. Now, if you do it in a way that is helpful, and you can always use other benchmarks and other examples, but never at the expense of putting this person down and putting this person up to say, you should be more like that. That kind of comparison, I think, is never helpful. And the third thing is pushing. Now, again, we all need to be pushed. We all need to be pushed a little bit, but it's how much you do it, when you do it, and with what intent. Just as an example, in my teaching, I have students who have told me, oh man, I used to be really interested in biology or marine biology or something. They were really interested in something at a young age, and they would read books on it. And then the parents, seeing that, would go out and buy like 10 volumes, like 10 books of these things, and deliver it all to the kid's room and say, wow, you like this? Read all of these 10 books. And the kid is like, I don't want to read all these books. Now it becomes no fun for me anymore. They push them too hard at the wrong time, in the wrong way. Pushing can be good, but if you push the wrong way at the wrong time, and if you do it too much, again, it can just be demotivating. Because the message you're sending is, yeah, what you're doing is good, but that's not enough. You need to do more of this. It always has to be with, let me just give you an example of a better way to have done that. So instead of, if a kid is interested in, let's say, or you have an employee interested in something, instead of just pushing them and overwhelming them with something, maybe you say, oh, you like that book? What do you like about that book? Tell me something that you learned about that book. And you share the interest. And you say, well, what's another book that you might want to read? Is there another thing that you might want to read? Like what kind of subject? And maybe I can help you find a good book on that. So you go to the bookstore together, you browse Amazon together, whatever it is, and you help the kid choose, and you let the kid choose, but you're involved in the process. And then it makes it feel, oh yeah, I got that cool book. And you might say, oh yeah, you know what? How about this book? What do you think about that book? And you make the kid part of the decision. You make the employee part of the decision-making process. And if you do that, I think it motivates people much more than to say, oh, here's 10 books that I found, and why don't you read all of these? Here's, another thing that I found, why don't you try all of these? Here's 10 classes that you can go take to improve your skills. I mean, that just is not motivating. And I think people sometimes have the wrong view on how these things demotivate people. So be very careful in how you criticize, how you compare, if at all, and how you push people. Because done the wrong way, most of the time I see people doing this, and it actually demotivates people, and you're getting the opposite results of the thing that you intended. So if you want to really motivate, you got to do those things the right way. You have to be careful. You have to make sure that they feel like what they did was worthy, and you compliment that on it. They feel like they're being supported, not pushed. They feel like they're being encouraged, not just criticized. They feel like they're being challenged, not compared. And so these things are so very important. I'm CK at CK Education. Thanks so much for watching as always. And until my next video, I hope you stay well.